and welcome into Poke the Bear, episode 50. I'm Evan Marinofsky, back here with Conor Ryan. Yes, I'm back from vacation. Conor killed it last week, doing it all on his own, which people don't realize is not easy. That's not an easy thing to do. Not that we don't have a lot to say, but talking for 45 minutes straight is not exactly the greatest thing in the world for the voice box. So maybe I'll do the majority of the talking today. You're resting up. You had to rest up for a bit after that.
Yeah, the good thing though, Evan, is that at least we had to talk about like Oliver Ekman-Larsson, and like it's very easy to get wound up as to why the Bruins shouldn't get him because he's been legit like garbage over the last like 2 years. Like not like kind of bad, like not like a little reclamation project. No, he costs a crap ton of money. And my God, he has been absolutely dreadful. So riffing off of that for about 20 minutes, did a pretty good job. So shout out to Oliver Ekman-Larsson for hopefully contributing in the one positive way he will on any Bruins discussions, because if the Bruins get him, would not be great.
Didn't it just come out that the Coyotes are only they only want to retain like 1.25 million of his salary? Is that what the number I saw?
Yeah, which just the latest and just a clown show operation they have out there. I mean, this is a team that whether it's the fact that they can't even pay off their own bills for their own arena, which is far away outside of the actual city of Phoenix, to having a horrible farm system, to all of their absolute, mishandling of the draft the last couple of years with some of the guys they picked, coupled with the fact that they lost their first round pick for, I think it was like improper like draft testing. I don't know what the exact thing is, but it was losing a first round pick because of it. To now the new thing is moving Conor Garland because they don't want to pay a guy who has been their best forward for probably the last 2 years, which seems like he's well in line to get a simple pay raise. I think he was making $775,000 last year, so would seem like he's more than due for that, I would say, Evan. So not going to pay that guy, but then trying to still have leverage when you've got a busted ass defenseman that you're trying to offload. So great rationale from that team. Good to see the NHL is continue to prop up a franchise like that seems to just slowly be dying in the desert. So
yeah,
we open this podcast just by burying the Coyotes, but you know what? They deserve it. That franchise is a joke.
I was gonna say we're off to a hot start, just absolutely ripping apart the Coyotes, which, as you said, very well deserved. I mean, just a joke down there in the desert. So funny that like Vegas in like 4 years completely overtook them as like the team in the desert. So happy to see that. Yes, Conor Garland as well. That stuff is great. We'll get into that probably later in the offseason as that becomes a little bit of a bigger story. By the way, we didn't even say what episode this was. It was episode 50, which is the Jonas Gustafsson episode.
Of course.
There's no other 50s. I don't think there's any other 50s that I can think of. Maybe Brendan Gaunce would be the other. I don't think there's any other big 50s in any point in Bruins history. Now, someone's going to be like, oh, you don't remember on the 76 team, this number 50? And I'll be, nope, I don't remember him. But I don't think there was. So the we'll stick with Jonas Gustafsson as the episode, the guy for this episode. I was pissed I missed the Rich Peverley episode. I was so mad. Love Rich. So unfortunately missed out on him. There is some recent news with the Bruins. NHL Awards dropped on Tuesday night. No Bruins won anything, but a lot of encouraging things from Marchand and McAvoy. Marchand finished his first team All-Star. He also finished his fifth in the Hart Trophy voting, which is pretty sick. And Charlie McAvoy fifth in the Norris. Now, I think McAvoy could have maybe gone fourth or third, but goes fifth, whatever. Your first impressions on all of that?
Yeah, no, I going into this did not think, well, one, we didn't know that we knew they weren't going to win because I don't think they were announced as finalists anyway, but I think you could have made the argument for, especially I think McAvoy finishing like, third, maybe. I think probably the biggest issue probably with that top three finish is probably Hedman, who I think he's the one kind of holdover from like the reputation vote. And I will say, I think some awards this year were like the Bergeron-Selke one will still, make me rip my hair out. But for the most part, I think a lot of voters are at least taking more time to look at some of the underlying numbers and blending that into their rationale of how they approach these things. Because I think if this was 5 years ago, Adam Fox and probably even like Cale Makar wouldn't even probably finish close. I think probably especially Adam Fox, where maybe he's not as dynamic as, if you're just doing an eye test with a guy like Makar, or you watch him in the ozone, you're like, oh my God, this guy's crazy. Granted, Fox is still a very good player too, but I think he'd be a guy that maybe wouldn't be seriously considered if it wasn't 4 or 5 years ago. So it's good to see that seems like some of the league voters are taking that more into account. But if you're McAvoy, yeah, I think finishing fifth, I think he doubled where he finished last year. I want to say he finished 10th last year, I want to say. So for him, it's, I think, what we expected. It's what the Bruins expected when you kind of gave the keys to him for the defense moving on from Zdeno Chara, that he would thrive with more minutes, more responsibilities. And that was the case this year. And from the Bruins perspective, you have to look at it as being, this is like his ceiling has still not been set at all yet, right? I mean, he could go in next year and average 24, 25 minutes a game. If he gets more looks on the power play, the top power play unit, if he's a guy who plays the way he did this past year, but adds an extra 15 points to his stat line, some voters start taking more notice on that. It's not always fair that, the offensive production is a bigger determinant in the Norris voting, but it's something that I think you have to expect that McAvoy is going to hit going forward. I mean, he was, you could make the case he was the MVP of the Bruins this past year, if not him or Marchand. So to have him make that jump up to, top 5 voting, I think it's definitely a positive sign for him, and a positive sign that I think voters are keeping tabs on him, because again, McAvoy is also a guy that if you're just a casual fan, or you're just, you don't watch the Bruins and you watch him just a random, I don't know, game and match against like the Blackhawks, he's not a guy that, his highlight reel is as crazy as even like a Hedman or a Makar, obviously, but you just watch kind of the little things he does, whether it's transition game, breakouts, obviously the minutes he logs, shutdown minutes, physicality for being a top pairing guy. He's got it all. So to have him get recognized in that, I think is probably a positive step forward. And for people who are upset that probably he didn't finish higher, I think it's a fair bet to assume that he's going to be in the running for quite a few years going forward, most likely higher than 5th too.
Yeah, I think everyone kind of thinks that McAvoy is definitely going to be a top 3 guy within the next year or two. Wouldn't be surprised to see him even get a lot higher next season. And you're right, though. It's funny because a few years ago, it goes to show how far advanced analytics have come and how popularized they've become, that a few years ago, I don't even know if Fox makes the top 3. Like, just because they went so much off of points and reputation and how big you were. And that was how Hedman got a bunch of notoriety. So it is good to see guys like Fox up there and McAvoy. And so it's funny, Cale Makar gets second, UMass. But you're right. Makar is kind of the guy who is all sort of flash and sort of, you notice him more than anybody else, which I think, and by the way, he's super effective, like deserves to be in the top 3. He'll win a Norris at some point too. But it is an interesting thing that the top 2 guys are, second year guys, McAvoy, young guy, a good amount of young guys in that top 10. So definitely good for the league. Definitely good for the league that they have those guys up there. Safe bet that Charlie McAvoy gets himself a Norris or close to one in the next coming years. So the other piece of award news I mentioned, Marchand finishes first team, well deserved. Finishes 5th in the Hart Trophy voting, which is very big. It's crazy to think you finish top 5 in anything, but to finish top 5 in MVP is pretty sick. And it just hits at the point, and this is something a lot of Bruins media have been pushing for a while, Bruins fans as well. Marchand's the top left wing in the game. And it's good to see that the rest of the league is starting to take notice. And I think the reputation he had of being a rat and being dirty or whatever is kind of gone. And the fact that he's a really effective 2-way left wing is huge. And I think that as you start to see, I don't know if we're ever going to see him win a Hart. Again, I don't know if I ever see him surpassing McKinnon, McDavid. I mean, really just McDavid. I don't think anybody's surpassing McDavid.
100 out of 100 first place votes. Kind of ran away from it. So there's no need to hang your head if you're Marchand or any of these other guys who came up short.
Thankfully, no one messed that up. Thankfully, no one was like, McDavid's second. We're going to put Matthews first.
It's going to be, it was going to be definitely like someone putting Matthews on there, but.
Yeah, I'm glad that they got that one right. They got pretty much everything right. The voters did, at least, which I think is always a positive thing. But back to Marchand. Good to see him solidifying himself as the top left wing in the NHL. How, how much better can he get? Like, because he's in his prime. He's directly in his prime. You wonder how many of these years he's got left. What is left with him?
Yeah, it's tough to kind of map out how much longer he can play at this peak, but you also have to wonder in this kind of level he's playing at right now, is there still another gear he can hit? Like, is there still something that, even if it's maybe another 1 or 2 year peak, can he be a dude who gets over a full season like 110 points or something? And you kind of saw that this past year. And I think one thing that made a major difference for him was getting that off-season surgery, which obviously took him out for a while, but he mentioned how much better he felt after that. And I think at some point during the season, I want to say the tail end of the year, he still said that, recovering from that kind of surgery, the amount of work that went into it, he still wasn't 100% to open the year. They're still shaking off the rust. So now with another full season, I don't think he had any off-season procedures this year. You look at it, if he goes into this next season completely healthy without any limitations, able to get back on the ice in a timely manner. We already know that he's a workout freak. Guy's obviously always training pretty much year round. If he can hit another gear, and whether that's just better shutdown numbers or, his point totals jump up again, it wouldn't surprise you to have him have another year or two of 100 plus points over an 82 game season. Right. So we'll see kind of what the next step is, because of course the decline is eventually going to get there for a guy his age, but you look at just the other factors, the fact that he's continued to get better, the fact that this offseason should be relatively normal for him, not just because of COVID, but because of just his overall recovery timeline. It's fair to assume that he maybe has another year or two where he can hit another level, which is, for the Bruins, great. For the rest of the league, very scary.
Yeah, I mean, he's 33 right now, be 34 at the end of next season. So, yeah, you have to assume 1 to 2 years left of this kind of domination on that top line. And that kind of just solidifies the fact that this Bruins team needs to keep going for it. Because you don't want to waste the primes of Marchand. Bergeron's at the end of his prime. Pasternak's kind of just entering his. McAvoy. You don't want to waste that. I think that's one of the big things with Marchand's success. So, interested to see if he can get to 4th place or 3rd place in the Hart Trophy voting. I think that would require a lot more points. But who knows? He could do it. He's on a line that could do it. So I never know with that. Around the league, the Stanley Cup is taking place, and it is Canadiens and the Lightning, which is a big in terms of really everything. But there are a few lessons. The NHL is kind of a copycat league. There are a few lessons that can be learned from this series. And there was one you pointed out in a column recently I really liked. And it's the size aspect on defense. Now, Connor, haven't we talked about this a lot before? Where teams typically that go deep in the playoffs, that go and win the Cup final, have bigger defensemen. And this seems to be the case with the Lightning and the Habs.
Yeah, it always seems to be the case. And as much as, I wrote something recently about kind of switching gears a little bit with Conor Garland and why the Bruins should be interested in getting him just as a secondary scoring option. Everyone's like, well, you got to get bigger, man. I'm like, well, you can pick and choose your battles as to where you need to get bigger on your roster, right? Because, I don't know, look at, not to compare the two, but look at Braden Point. Does Braden Point give a shit about, being a smaller guy? Has Garfield given a shit at his size? You can still have smaller forwards that do very well in the playoffs, but one trend you've seen over the last couple of years has been teams rolling out a big decor. And I mean, if we want to just really run through the list of let's look the last 2 Stanley Cup champions, the St. Louis Blues. Everyone talks about the fact that they punched the Bruins in the face repeatedly over that 7-game series, but it wasn't just that. It was also the fact that they had 6 dudes out there who took up a whole bunch of space, limited the chances, really did some damage against the Bruins forwards in that series. But most importantly, limited those grade A looks. So Petrangelo, 6'3", 210. Colton Parayko, 6'6", 230.
Ooh.
Not bad. Jay Bouwmeester, 6'4", 206. Carl Gunnarsson, 6'2", 198. Joel Edmondson, 6'4", 215, and Vince Dunn, who's the smaller of the group, but 6 feet, 203, kind of in that playmaking, puck moving role. And even then, 6 feet, 203, he's still pretty big dude.
Future Bruin.
Yes, maybe. And then, 2020 Tampa Bay Lightning, Victor Hedman, 6'6", 223, which I always forget. People always forget, I think, of how humongous Victor Hedman is. Like, he's already such a great player, but he's also big boy. Ryan McDonough, 6'1", 215. Mikhail Sergachev, 6'3", 215. Eric Chernak, 6'3", 233. Shattenkirk, 6 foot, 206. And then they kind of had like Ruta and Bogosian, but all those guys are over 6 feet. I think Bogosian, 6'3", 221. Big decor.
Yep.
You wonder why the
big boy.
Yeah, you wonder why the Bruins scored only 3 even strength goals, I think, in that Toronto bubble series against them. It's one, you got Vasilevsky, but also you've got a bunch of big bodies in front of them that are limiting chances, are blocking shots, are clearing pucks out of grade AI. So it makes a difference. And then look at Montreal this year. I think the biggest thing too is just having a lot of heft in their top 4, because I think we've seen so far in this series, especially the last few series with Montreal, John Merrill and Eric Gustafsson are kind of like, yeah, we'll roll you guys out there a little bit. And Merrill's a pretty big dude, 6'3", but like those guys don't play all that much in these games. But you just look at Montreal's top 4: Weber, 6'4", 229. Joel Edmondson, again, 6'4", 215. Jeff Petrie, 6'3", 197. And Ben Chariot, 6'3", 225. So, like, they've literally got all bunch of big bodies back there. So, if you're the Bruins, and again, not saying that it means you have to just wipe the slate clean and it's like, all right, you got to get rid of Grzelcyk, you got to get rid of Riley. But if you have, like, one of Grzelcyk and then you add other pieces that fit in that spot, it makes a major difference in terms of just how your decor is constituted. So whether that's the guys we've mentioned on this podcast many times, whether it's via trade with Ekholm or free agency with Alexiak or McCabe, like, you need bigger bodies on that blue line desperately. It's something that it's not like it's a thing that's like a trendy way a team plays or a style of play or how they execute. It's a trend every single year with these teams that go deep, is they've got a lot of big bodies on that decor.
And a lot of those big bodies, by the way, are good puck movers. I mean, you look at a guy like Sergachev. Sergachev's a beast. Mm-hmm. I mean, that guy's huge, and he's out there shifty, moving the puck well, breaking out of his own zone well. So that's the thing. And again, it's all about limiting those high danger chances. And bigger guys tend to do it a little bit better because they're not going to let you to those areas. So, yeah, I mean, we've mentioned it. We mentioned our Bruins. We mentioned it on this. Alexiak, McCabe. You said Ekholm. You got to add one of those guys. Ekholm obviously is going to be much more difficult, but a guy like Alexiak, I mean, even John Merrill for a third pairing role. I mean, I know he's, not getting a ton of time, but he's bigger. He helps in that regard. You can rely on him in your own zone. So you definitely need that. You need that. I mean, Lozon has a little bit of a bite, has a little bit of a punch to him, but younger guy, needs to maybe grow into his own a little bit. So that's, I think, the main lesson. I think that might be the only lesson. I don't know if there's any, I mean, the other lesson, and I've said this before, you got to develop down the middle. When I look at the Canadians, and I even look at the Lightning, a lot of their own development down the middle of the ice, which the Bruins do not have a lot of at this moment. I'm talking young guys, not Bergeron and Krejci. I'm talking, younger guys. But I mean, you just look at Montreal, Deneau, Suzuki, Kotkaniemi, like, develop their own guys down the middle. And that's a core. A core. Like, Deneau shut down Stone in that last series. That is a legit core down the middle. And the other thing I'll say is both of these teams are in your division next year. And I know people keep, I tweeted this, and people keep discounting the Canadians. And you said this on Bruins Beat. That's a good roster. That is not a roster. I mean, I know they were like 18th overall this year. And I mean, really got to the Cup Final by, wouldn't do that every year, but that's not a bad team. That's a pretty damn good roster. On D, you mentioned up front, obviously have Carey Price in net. So they're in your division, the Lightning,
the Sabres.
The Sabres. I love people replying to my tweet or quote it being like, don't forget about the Sabres. Don't forget about the Senators. I'm like, no. Like
No.
I'm happy to forget about those teams.
Which I will give credit though. Like Senators could be like pretty solid by like another year or two. Like as much as that team's a absolute shit show, like one thing they do well, they usually like, develop guys pretty well. Like the problem is they never keep them. That's the problem.
They can't retain them, but they develop.
But like they do a pretty good job of rolling out like good prospects. They draft well and they get good. So like I'm not saying the Senators are going to be like a breakout team next year, but they could be a team that can be a pain in the ass in the next couple of years and are on the kind of upswing. So it's not going to be easy.
No, and they also have the Panthers in their division. And the Maple Leafs. I know people don't like to hear that because it's the Maple Leafs, but that's still like a pretty solid regular season team. So, you just imagine them at least getting to the playoffs. What happens after? Who knows? But so yeah, that is that. I think that's really it from the Cup final. If there's anything else the only other lesson is you wish there were two better teams in this, maybe Lightning in Vegas, or I know Bruins fans wish there was a team that they could actively root for because there's no reason for you don't want the Canadiens to win and you don't want the Lightning to win. So what are you going to do? But anyways, that is Poke the Bear episode 50. Connor, before we head out, what can the people look forward to over at BSJ?
Yeah, we did a breakdown earlier this week of potential trade for Conor Garland. We looked at defensemen that they could trade for. I think moving forward this week, we'll start looking at kind of ideal plans for the offseason, kind of mapping out, if everything went right, what we'd be looking at. Next week, I think early on in the week, we're going to have, I will be in South Carolina, but we will still have content churning out over at BSJ. So I think we're going to have our annual report cards finally coming out hopefully by next week. The end of the season should probably be near. I don't think this series is going to go very long. I don't think that we're going to go to a 7-game series between Tampa and Montreal. So we'll have report cards out next week and start looking ahead to this upcoming season finally as we get closer to the Kraken draft, because again, I don't think we're going to see a lot of actual traction happen before that happens. So we'll have all that over at BSJ though. So subscribe at bostonsportsjournal.com. If you want to follow me on Twitter, you can do that at ConorRyan_93.
Go do all that. Connor, have fun in South Carolina.
I will be sweating.
Oh, yes. But we are up here too.
So I'm actually kind of used to it. Yeah.
Yeah, I've been sweating this whole podcast because I just got out of the shower. My room is super hot, and it's just, so hot in this world we got right now. But anyways, have fun in South Carolina. Southie. Maybe call it Southie. We'll call it Southie.
I will absolutely never do that. But
no, you got to do it. Turn it into Southie. Anyways, that is Poke the Bear episode 50. Conor Ryan, Evan Marinofsky, you Bruins, Poke the Bear listeners. Have a great rest of your day.